How exciting. Good evening and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dresick, and this is your other host,
Christina Fasonic, in the wilds of West Virginia, where we've been threatened with an imposing tornado warning. So we think it's over now, though. So hopefully neither one of us or any of us will blow away during this broadcast. But everything is at least looking better. It's starting to clear up all but rain.
We're going to try not to end it with Surrender Dorothy.
Yes, I was about to make a Wizard of Oz reference, but I can always count on you to do that. So there we go.
I couldn't help myself. I'm deeply and super excited about, we always have wonderful guests, but I am exceptionally excited about tonight's guest. Is somebody I have wanted to have on the show for a really significant period of time. I heard about our guest tonight, Russell Shorto. In 2004, I was writing my first novel, and a mutual friend of ours, Dr. Kamal Verma at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, said, you have got to read the work of Russell Shorto from Westmont. He is doing really terrific work. And in fact, even 16 years later, he is still doing really terrific work. He is the author of his latest book is Small Time, a story of my family and the mob. So let me tell you a little bit about Russell. He is the author, the best-selling author of The Island at the Center of the World, which is a wonderful, amazing history of the city of New York. He's also the author of Amsterdam and Revolutionary Song, and he is a contributing writer at the New York Times Magazine. He lives in Cumberland, Maryland. I think we should bring him out.
I think so, too. Let's do it.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you, Christina, for the kind words and for having me on your show. I'm happy to be here.
We're grateful you could make time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You want me to jump right in and read?
Yes, we'll disappear and we'll catch you in minutes.
We're going to disappear.
Okay. I will just read. I'll go start at the beginning because that's a good place to start. And I'll read the first couple of pages. The book, as Damian said, is called Small Time. Chapter 1 is The Setup. It started one evening when I was home for the holidays. Picture a too warm living room, so crammed with relatives that people's limbs are overlapping. A day or two after Christmas, a cloudy gray night sky, snow starting to fall. I'm a writer of narrative history, by the way, someone who makes a living telling nonfiction stories about the past. So in terms of subject matter, you might think this one would have been obvious to me long ago. It was not. Anyway, the TV is blaring from one corner of my parents' living room. The tree is stuffed into another. A tray of cookies is going around. And somebody mentions that Frankie is in town. Who's Frankie? Your mother's cousin, Frankie Filia. I'd met Frankie once or twice. I knew he was a jazz singer who had left town a lifetime ago for Las Vegas, that he had a long career there, playing gigs and tending bar and casinos. After 5 decades of fingering the thick strings of the stand-up bass, crooning for an endless succession of smoky rooms, he'd decided to retire and come home. An hour later, a couple of carloads of us figure we'll head down to the lounge where Frankie now plays once a week in a local geriatric combo. Stepping from the snowy night into a dark room, confronted by the dank smell of all old bars. And there's Frank, luridly lit on the makeshift stage, a little guy in his late 70s, roundish body flanked by the shapely neck of the bass. He puts a hand over his eyes to peer at the doorway, smiles as he sees us, distant relations here to partake of what he's offering. We pile in, order drinks, stand there with our big coats on, ranged around like Easter Island statues. Frank's got a nice, foggy, breezy voice, the kind that invites you to take a ride with him. Volare, fly me to the moon. At a break in the set, there are kisses, greetings. We're standing in a circle, and at some point, Frank looks across at me and wags a finger. Russell, I've been wanting to talk to you. You're the writer. What are we going to do about the story? What story? In the middle of asking, the answer is right there, fully formed in my mind. I feel I need to declare here that I had a normal small-town American childhood, meaning that it was weird or quaint in all the standard ways. Going on Sunday drives as a family, playing strip poker with hushed friends in somebody's parents' basement, whatever. There was an element of an Italian-American self-awareness, but it was mostly limited to food and emotiveness. Long conversations about spaghetti sauce and aunts who kissed you on the lips. Those were the ways we were Italian. Frank shakes his head in exasperation. What story? Your grandfather, the mob. A silence settles on the little group of mostly older relatives. My Aunt Josie's visiting from Detroit, where she and my uncle moved about 6 decades earlier, but everyone else still lives in town. And while some will, on occasion, tell a story or two about back then, the inclination has been to maintain a veil of silence over the topic. I maintained it too. It's not like I didn't always know that my grandfather was a small-town mob honcho of some kind. As a little boy, that time my mother and I ran into him on the street downtown, the discomfort I felt toward the solemn, almost stranger in front of me, who I somehow knew had been ostracized from the family, was wrapped around that awareness. Even the gesture he made in that awkward and almost wordless sidewalk encounter, taking off his watch and giving it to me, draping it over my skinny wrist, I can still see it hanging there, with a weight to it that wanted to pull me down to the pavement. Felt ominous in its inappropriateness. It telegraphed that here was someone who was used to outsized acts, to ignoring the norms. But I had no idea what that meant, no idea who he was really. I didn't want to learn more, and I never did. No doubt partly because Frank had lived for so long out of town, outside the circle, he hadn't hugged the silence into himself. Strutting the streets of his hometown, a teenage bookie with a pocket full of money who'd just dropped out of high school and was proud to be in on the action. Those were golden memories for him. It's also true that he was just an open kind of guy. Some people are natural excavators of the past, blessed or cursed with the conviction that if you haul memories up into the light of day, they will glow like gems and be worth something. Frank's about to go back up to the mic, but he presses me one more time, tossing out a few lurid details about back in the day, oblivious to the awkward silent suffering of the others. I turn to my dad, the mobster's son, expecting to find a look of censure that will help me to end this. There's something in his eyes, but it's almost a glint, an eagerness. I find it embarrassing, like seeing a parent naked. Pondering for half a second, I realize I shouldn't be surprised. My father has always been more daring than me, willing to jump into things, to risk making a fool of himself. I shake my head confidently at Frank. Not my thing. He gives me a look. What do you mean? You write history. This is American history. It's right in front of you. He's getting personal now, telling me how to do my job. And just for a second, the marketable outline of my grandfather's world spreads across the front of my brain like a banner ad. The kind of thing you could sell to your publisher. Everybody knows the mob, but nobody knows the story of the small town mob. How it was as much a part of mid-century American life as the hot dog. How, just like the interstate highway system, it stitched together the Schenectadys and Scrantons, the Zanesvilles and Topecas, the Wichitas and Amarillos and Fresnos. You could make a case that this was the real mob story, maybe in a way the real American story of that era. In the same instant, I get a glimmer too of how our family fits into that broader picture. As Frank is waiting for me to say something, I have in my head the image of the somber man in a baggy gray suit forcing his watch on me, along with a few other shavings that the magnet of my childhood brain pulled in. A second-hand image borrowed from my dad's memory of stacks of money arrayed across the surface of a bed. Men talking about the boys, and me knowing they were not boys like me. The boys downtown, the boys in Pittsburgh. In my grandmother's basement, a large cage with dice in it, which had a handle for turning it, and me half-heartedly trying to play with it, but knowing it wasn't a toy. But no, I can't do this. I know, standing there, that at the center of this story is this dimly lit figure of my grandfather, which means that it would involve my long-suffering grandmother, with whom I spent so many summer days in my early childhood, sympathetically studying her solitude and bitterness out of the corner of my eye, sitting skinny-legged on her sofa pretending to read comic books while she peered beyond at the soap operas on TV, chain-smoking pell-mells and reflexively pouring from a quart bottle of Schmidt's beer into a tiny glass. Such a story would gather her up into it. In all likelihood, the research would lead me to the source of her pain, and the pain, like a stain, would spread. I give Frank a patronizing smile and shake my head again. Not interested. Too much on my plate. And anyway, my subject area is further back. Long ago. Far away. I'll stop there.
Wow, that was fantastic. As somebody who lives in an old mob town, Bill Lias was king here in Wheeling for a very long time. A lot of that resonated with me, the idea that really the mob story, the American story, was in these small town, mobs where they talked about the boys in the bigger cities. And we still see some remnants of that. And now, of course, it's opioids. And it's a different understanding. I mean, people still talk about Big Bill as yeah, he killed some people, but he bought iron lungs for the kids when they had polio. I mean,
there was a great deal of respect, and you're right. It's all these towns of that size, like Wheeling and Morgantown and Altoona and Johnstown, and all over the country. And it's also that mob that I was researching in my book was a real thing of the 20th century. It had to do with this wave of Italian immigrants coming in the early 20th century, and then discrimination against them, and they band together. And as you say, nowadays, it's a whole different thing. Those, partly because of just assimilation. I mean, my grandfather, they'd had no choice. They were like downtrodden. They were these low-life, Dagos. And I just had a normal American upbringing. So there are other groups who are doing the heavy lifting of the underworld right now.
Well, beyond the subject matter, I mean, the writing is just really exquisite as well.
Thank you.
The description, I mean, I could be in that living room with the crowd and the crossed legs, and it's too hot, and why we're happy to be together, but it's kind of miserable too, and let's put on our big coats and go downtown and see what's going on.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Really
that's my family in a nutshell.
that was wonderful.
Thanks.
No, that is it's such a delicious opening to a wonderful book. I love that it's not just about the intersection of your family history with American history, but it becomes later a book almost as much about your coming to terms with that family history and your sort of the adventure there. So it just takes this wonderful, delicious turn.
Thanks. Yeah. And I think it's typical of a lot of people. I went away as far away as I could to go to college, and I kept going. Eventually I moved to Japan. I mean, kept going seemingly as far away as I could go. And then eventually, as I get older, you start to wonder. And that's what that beginning was about, that popping that bubble and making me wonder, what was it and I was named after. It was named after my grandfather,
I love that at the end of the chapter, the moment where why someone's willing to talk with you, and because of your name.
Yeah.
It's funny. You are Russell are probably about our 95th person on this show who has grown up in Northern Appalachia, and I would say at least 50% have that story of I wanted to get as far away from here as I could, and only when I was I moved to New York myself, Los Angeles. Other folks, a lot of New York, a lot of California, and people talk about kind of looking back and seeing it through those kind of eyes. And it took that distance to make any sense of it.
Yeah. I think, it's typical of youth. You want to, if you have any brains and any gumption, you want to get out and see the world. But Yeah, maybe I mean, these are pretty downtrodden areas, and when I was of age, it was really, really Rust Belt. So, and there wasn't much there anyway. So you kind of had to if you wanted to do something. But then if I've become now a big proponent of people doing family history, because it's history. If you're researching your relatives in World War II, whatever, I mean, that's American history. And it's also, what I say to people now is find the oldest person in your family and turn on a tape recorder. And I said that recently, and then this guy said, I'm the oldest person in my family. And I said, well, record yourself. They'll be grateful,
At least he's not going to need to track someone down.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Yeah, the idea that, we think of history with a capital H, but really history is the little h history. It's the history that happens, when people go off to war, when, children are born, when people graduate from college, when, they're big and small events that create history. And none of those big historical moments could happen without the little history.
Yeah, I'd like to say nowadays, because I've taught some courses in writing family history, and I'd like to say the smaller a story is, the bigger it is. So do you think why does anybody care about my family or how my parents met or whatever it is? The more you zoom in on that, the more universal it is. It's about love and betrayal and dreams dashed, and and everybody can relate to it. So it's actually there's this weird contradiction, but the closer in you get, the more I think it resonates with people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also just such a wonderful ear for detail. The hot dogs and the glowing. It's just lovely. It's such a real gift. I love that stuff. The intersection, I think that capital H history and the small personal history, the way that they, kind of reinforce each other, this embroidery of meaning. Oh, that's wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. So the book is called Small Time, and it is available all over Johnstown. It is available all over. I think it's probably still available all over.
Books are things that, there's this thing called Amazon, for example. It's just amazing.
Yeah. What now? What was it? Let me write that down.
But no, the independent bookstores, small bookstores in Johnstown and in the area around where I live and all that have been really great supporters of the book. And so I've been going around to those stores signing stock every time they get it in. So it's been great.
Yeah, we're really big on trying to support these indie bookstores here.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Well,
but as a last resort.
Thank you so much, Russell, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both. It was fun.
Yes, this was wonderful. Thanks so much.
Sure.
All right. And everybody, next week we've got our big Halloween thing.
Yes, we have a writer who tells scary stories on next week. So tune in next Thursday. We'll see you here, same time, 8 p.m. Good night, everybody.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yep.